The person you cannot stop thinking about may be saying the loudest thing through silence, and most people miss it completely. Read that again, because before you decide their quiet means they do not care, you need to see what may really be happening. Stay with me, because this can change the way you read every pause, every delayed reply, every moment that felt heavy for no clear reason. Some silence is cold, that is true, but some silence is loaded, full, pressurized. It carries feeling, fear, memory, hope, and confusion all at once. And when a person does not yet know how to hold all of that in words, they do the only thing they can do. They go quiet. You have felt this before. The strange stillness between you and someone who clearly feels something, yet says almost nothing. You replay small moments, their tone, their eyes, the way they stayed a little longer, then disappeared again. You wonder if you imagined the whole thing. You did not. And if you have ever sat in front of a screen waiting for one message that never came, or laid awake trying to understand why someone felt close and far at the same time, then listen carefully, because the next part matters more than you think. What looks like distance is not always disinterest. What looks empty is not always empty. Sometimes the quietest person in the story is carrying the heaviest truth, and they are terrified that the moment they speak, they will break the one thing that already feels too important to lose. Most people make the same mistake when someone they care about suddenly goes quiet. They treat the lack of words like proof that there is no feeling there. They assume that if something real existed inside that person, it would naturally come out as conversation, as effort, as clear contact, as obvious action. But human psychology does not work that neatly. A person does not always go silent when they feel nothing. Very often, they go silent when they feel too much. When what is happening inside them grows larger than the language they have available, speech begins to fail. Not because there is nothing there, but because what is there feels too serious to be pushed into ordinary words. Think about your own life, the moments that truly shook you, the moments that touched something deep. In those moments, did language come easily? Or did you sit there staring into space, holding the feeling because every sentence felt too small for what was happening inside you? That is what emotional weight does. It slows everything down. It makes people quiet. The person who pulled back may not be standing in a blank room with a blank mind. They may be standing under the pressure of something they do not yet know how to say without damaging it. They feel the meaning of what is between you. They feel the risk of saying the wrong thing. They feel the pressure of knowing that whatever comes next might matter in a way they cannot take back. That is not emptiness. That is someone holding something fragile and huge at the same time, afraid that one careless sentence could ruin the only thing that has felt this real in a very long time. When someone becomes distant, the person left waiting almost always turns inward and starts blaming themselves. You review everything, what you said, what you did not say, whether you asked for too much, whether you made them uncomfortable, whether something about you pushed them away. This is one of the most painful misreadings people make. Because when a person withdraws, they are not always making a judgment about your value. Many times they are reacting to something happening inside their own inner world, something that has far more to do with their fear, their history, and their capacity than with your worth. Their withdrawal is often not a verdict, it is a reflex. And reflexes do not wait for logic. They do not ask for permission. They fire fast. The mind has one main job before anything else: protect the self. So when a connection feels too strong, too real, too life-changing, the protective system can turn on automatically. It creates space the same way the body pulls away from fire. Not because the fire means nothing, but because the heat feels stronger than what the system knows how to manage without being changed by it. And here is the part almost nobody sees. The more real the connection is, the stronger that reflex can become. The more someone matters, the more intense the retreat may look. So the person receiving the silence reads it as proof they are not important. At the exact moment, it may be proving the opposite. Sit with that, because if you understand that one thing, you stop reading every retreat as rejection and start seeing how often silence is really a sign of emotional overload. People love to believe that strong feelings naturally create clear expression, that if someone is deeply moved, they will speak more, explain more, show more, that love, if it is big enough, will always become loud. But deep feeling and easy expression are not the same skill. They do not grow in the same place inside a person. Someone can carry enormous emotion and still have almost no ability to explain it cleanly. In fact, the larger the feeling becomes, the wider the gap can grow between experience and expression. A shallow stream moves fast. It makes noise. You can see its movement easily. But a deep river moves differently. It carries so much volume that from certain angles it almost looks still. That is how some people feel. Their silence is not a lack of depth. It is often proof of it. The person who has gone quiet around you may be carrying more than the people who speak freely and easily. Their quiet may not mean they have little to offer. It may mean that what they feel has grown so large that every available word seems too weak, too simple, too unworthy of the experience itself. Light feelings become light conversation. They are easy to hand over. But something that touches the deepest parts of a person does not rise quickly to the surface. It moves carefully, slowly, sometimes long after the silence has already said more than speech could. And if this is starting to sound uncomfortably familiar, stay here, because it goes deeper than most people are willing to admit. Silence is not always a closed door. Sometimes it is a feeling still taking shape behind one. When someone you care about goes quiet, it is natural to think the silence is about you. You are the one living inside it. You are the one feeling the ache of not knowing. So of course it feels personal. But most of the time, the silence is not really centered on you at all. What looks from the outside like someone stepping away from another person is often, on the inside, someone being pulled deeper into themselves. The quiet is not always a wall built against you. Sometimes it is a room they have entered alone because the connection awakened something they can no longer avoid. Real connection does that. It does not simply add warmth to life and leave the deeper layers untouched. It reaches into the foundation of a person and starts asking uncomfortable questions. Who are you beneath the image you perform for others? What do you actually want beneath the habits you inherited? Are you truly capable of staying present for something meaningful, or will you run back to distance and control the moment it becomes real? Those are not small questions, and people do not answer them quickly. They require honesty. They require a person to stand face to face with parts of themselves they have spent years avoiding. That process is hard. It is slow. It is unsettling. And during that process, silence can feel like the only honest response available. Because what do you say when your whole inner structure is being challenged by one connection? What do you say when someone's presence makes you see your own life more clearly than you wanted to? Sometimes, nothing. Sometimes you go quiet. Not because there is no meaning, but because there is too much of it moving through you at once. There is something hidden inside almost every person who has been hurt deeply, and most people never fully examine it. It does not walk in wearing a label. It does not clearly announce itself as trauma, fear, or emotional injury. It simply sits there inside the way a person responds to closeness, to vulnerability, to being seen. And when something real arrives, when a connection begins to matter, that buried pain activates. Not as a calm decision, not as a planned choice. It activates the way an old wound reacts to pressure. Fast, automatic, before the person even understands what is happening. This is what unprocessed pain actually does. It does not just make someone sad in obvious ways. It freezes them at the exact moment movement matters most. It creates paralysis that, from the outside, can look almost exactly like indifference. The person seems distant, flat, unavailable. But inside, the truth is often the opposite. They are not untouched. They are so deeply touched that the feeling has nowhere safe to go. Between what they feel and what they are able to show stands every moment from the past that taught them honesty could become regret. Every time they opened up and were hurt. Every time they cared and were left alone with the weight of that care. Every time they offered something true and watched it be mishandled. None of that history disappears just because something new has entered their life. It stands there in the doorway. And it makes moving forward feel more dangerous than standing still. This is why the quiet lasts longer than you expect. This is why mixed signals hurt so much. And this is why some of the deepest feelings arrive wearing the mask of hesitation. The easiest reading of silence is that nothing is happening. No movement, no change, no growth, just distance. But the most important changes in a human being rarely happen in public. They do not arrive with obvious signs. They happen in the private space where no one else can see, in long unwitnessed hours where a person is sitting inside the truth of their own experience, letting it work on them. Growth like this is not loud. It does not perform. It looks from the outside almost identical to stillness. Yet beneath that still surface, entire structures can be shifting. A person can be rethinking their defenses, questioning old patterns, facing fears they never named, and rebuilding the way they relate to love, trust, and vulnerability. None of that is visible in real time. So the outside observer assumes nothing is moving, but something is. A lot is. What you may be witnessing in their silence is not a person who has stopped caring, but a person who has gone so far inward that outward expression would feel dishonest before the inner process is complete. They cannot speak it yet because it is not fully formed yet. It is still becoming, still shaping itself in a place deeper than language. And that matters because many people ruin something meaningful by demanding clarity before the other person has found the words to offer it truthfully. Listen closely here. Not every delay means deception. Not every pause means the story is over. Sometimes the quiet is simply the sound of a person changing in ways the surface cannot show yet. And if you judge that too early, you may walk away from a process that was not dead at all. It was simply happening where you could not see it. Most people assume the thing that stops someone from speaking is fear of rejection. They think the silence is about protecting the self from hearing no. That sounds reasonable, and yes, sometimes it is part of the truth. But many times the deeper fear is not rejection. It is being misunderstood. Rejection hurts, but at least it leaves the truth untouched. If someone speaks honestly and the answer is no, painful as that is, the truth was still seen for what it was. It was simply not returned. That pain has shape, it has edges, it can be grieved and survived. But being misunderstood is different. When a person finally says something that matters deeply and it gets received through the wrong lens, made smaller, treated casually, or turned into something it was never meant to be, the damage cuts deeper. Because now the truth was not only refused, it was distorted, and they are left watching someone respond to a version of them that is not real. That is disorienting. That is why some of the most feeling people become the most careful. They are not only afraid you will say no, they are afraid you will not understand what they are actually trying to say yes to. They are afraid the feeling they protected for so long will come out imperfectly and be mistaken for something ordinary. So they wait. They hold it in. They search for words accurate enough to protect the meaning from being reduced. And during that waiting, their silence can look like withdrawal, when in truth it is precision, it is caution. It is someone trying not to let the most important thing inside them be mishandled by the one person whose understanding matters most. Beneath every long silence, there is often a question that almost no one thinks to look for. Not a decision already made, not a final ending. A question, a silent one. A question the other person may not have the courage, language, or certainty to ask directly, but it lives there all the same. In the pauses, in the unfinished messages, in the conversations that stop 1 inch before honesty. The question is simple, but its weight is enormous. Will you still be here when I finally find my way to the words? Will what exists between us survive the time it is taking me to become the version of myself that can cross this distance honestly? Can you sit inside uncertainty without turning it into a conclusion? Can you stop yourself from deciding that quiet means finished, that delay means no, that fear means absence? Most people cannot do this for long. They become restless. They want relief. They want clarity right now. So they force an answer from silence that silence never gave. They create an ending to protect themselves from waiting, and in doing that, they sometimes answer the other person's unspoken question in the most painful way possible. They prove the fear that created the silence in the first place. The fear of being too much to wait for, too complicated to understand, too slow to be loved through uncertainty. That is why patience matters here. Not endless patience, not self-abandonment, but mature patience, the kind that can hold space without filling it with panic. Because sometimes the silence is not hiding a lack of feeling. Sometimes it is trying to learn whether the connection is safe enough to survive the time truth needs in order to arrive whole. And let us be honest, this does not mean you should romanticize every silent person. Not all silence is depth. Not all distance is hidden love. Some people are unclear because they are unavailable. Some are quiet because they do not intend to move closer. That is real too. But the mistake is thinking silence always means one thing. It does not. The deeper truth is that silence must be read with context, with pattern, with emotional intelligence. Did their silence come with warmth before the retreat? Did you feel sincerity, fear, depth, conflict? Did their actions carry meaning even when their words failed? Or has the silence been empty from the beginning? These things matter. Because mature understanding is not blind hope. It is clear seeing. It is knowing that a person can be overwhelmed and still responsible, afraid and still genuine, silent and still deeply affected. But it is also knowing your own limits. You do not need to wait forever. You do not need to give endless chances to confusion that never turns into clarity. Still, before you decide what their quiet means, make sure you are reading it correctly. Ask yourself whether you are responding to what is truly there or to your own fear of being unwanted. Ask whether the silence feels dead or unfinished. There is a difference. And if you have ever lost something important because both people were scared and neither knew how to say what mattered, then you already know how tragic a misread can be. So do not rush this part. The next move does not always belong to urgency. Sometimes it belongs to understanding. Sometimes it belongs to staying calm long enough to see what the silence is really trying to say. So carry this with you. The person who has gone quiet around you may not be a puzzle to solve with pressure, distance, or your own sudden withdrawal. They may be a human being inside one of the hardest inner experiences there is, carrying something too heavy for casual language, protecting themselves from a feeling that has already crossed every boundary they thought they had, facing old pain your presence happened to awaken, changing in ways that cannot yet be seen from the surface. Searching for words careful enough to hold what they feel without breaking it. And beneath all of that, asking a question they may never say out loud. Will you still be there when I can finally speak? Not because they are playing games, not because they enjoy confusion, but because something inside them, something shaped by disappointment, by being misread, by being left alone with their honesty before, truly does not yet know the answer. And maybe this is the part nobody says enough. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is not speak too soon. Sometimes silence is not avoidance. Sometimes it is restraint. Sometimes it is the final shelter around a feeling that matters too much to expose carelessly. So before you turn their quiet into a final meaning, slow down. Look deeper. Notice the difference between emptiness and emotional weight. Notice the difference between disinterest and fear. Notice the difference between someone gone cold and someone standing very still, because what they feel is changing them from the inside out. If you understand that, you stop chasing noise and start recognizing truth, even when truth arrives without sound. And if this hits something real in you, then you already know this is not just about them. It is about you too. About the times you stayed quiet because your heart was full and your words felt too small. About the moments you wanted to reach out but fear, memory, pride, or pain held your hand in place. About the way deep feeling can make a person freeze instead of move. So maybe the final truth is this. Silence is not always the opposite of love. Sometimes it is love passing through fear. Sometimes it is care trapped behind old defenses. Sometimes it is a soul trying to reach the surface without losing the depth of what it feels. That does not make the waiting easy. It does not erase the ache, but it does change the meaning, and meaning changes everything. Because once you understand that some quiet people are not empty but overwhelmed, not absent but inward, not careless but deeply afraid of mishandling what matters, you stop making quick conclusions that destroy slow truths. You begin to read more carefully, you become less reactive, more aware, more precise. And maybe that is what this whole message was trying to give you. Not false hope, not a fantasy, just a better lens, a stronger one, a calmer one, A lens that can tell the difference between a closed heart and a trembling one, between a dead end and a difficult beginning, between silence that means nothing and silence that is carrying everything. So before you walk away, ask yourself one last question. Was their quiet truly empty, or was it the only way they knew how to protect something they were not yet ready to lose? If you can answer that honestly, then you may finally understand what their silence was trying to say all along.